have your raised hand on, please use that. Okay, we've got a lot of people in the room. We want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to speak. Okay, this is Job Search Lunch and Learn. Welcome to the group nobody ever wants to be part of. We know you don't really want to be here. Being in job search isn't fun, but I want you to know that we're here to provide you with advice, supports, some success stories from other people, lots of questions that you may have that we can get answers to. Our goal is to make sure that you get the support you need to move on to that next forever job. We've been doing this for a while. In fact, I just took a look, and actually, I've been doing this program now as a free program for all job seekers for almost 8 years. And we've had 900 and I think it's 903 of the people that I've worked with over those last 8 years who've gotten offers. So we know that all the advice, the support, the information that we provide works. And we're here to give you that advice and support and information. So it's networking, advice, support, and fun. I'm a former recruiter, so I have 20 years of both inside and outside recruiting, headhunting, executive search, whatever it is you want to call it, as well as that experience as a job search coach. So my goal is to be able to provide you with that information from both sides of the desk. This is my labor of love. I do this free program because it's a way of giving back. I know how hard job search is, and I know that networking is important, and these communities are important, and we're really happy that you're here to do it. In addition, my private business is that I do one-on-one coaching, and I know I've done some coaching with some of you. I work with people on all aspects of their job search, helping them to discover what their strengths really are, what they enjoy doing, and then finding those opportunities that match, showcasing how to showcase those skills and experiences for that next opportunity, and then helping them move forward. So I'll put my information, my private information in the chat. But for now, we have two other job search experts that are here to help support you. And I would like to let them introduce themselves. Ken, and then Sue.
Well, thanks very much, Linda, for this group, and I'm very happy to be here and help support you and everyone else. My name is Kenneth Lang. I'm up here in northern New Jersey, and we didn't get a lot of snow today, actually. I think, Laura, you got a little more snow down by us. Um, I'm here not just to support you, but to support anyone who needs any help in any situation right now. Things are very challenging from a job search perspective. The latest is not the best with a little more layoffs, but I think the most important thing is to build out a network. I say that again and again. It's not about applying online, it's building a network and building relationships. I put my URL in the chat, and I'm happy to have conversations with anyone if you'd like, as well. It's just follow-ups because I don't know that we can get to everything on the call. And I'll put a link to my calendar too. Laura, I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation as well. Have a great day, everyone.
Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Griffey. I'm known as Sue Mentors in the virtual world. I have a global mentoring consultancy, which means I talk to professionals in transition all over the world. But mostly I'm known for my pom-poms. I'm the mentor with pom-poms. And I want to remind you that not only do we celebrate big wins, small wins, you showing up here today is one step beyond what many people are doing in job searching. Seeking out a mentorship group where you get mentoring from Linda, Ken, me, others. Your peer network on here also helps you tremendously. So showing up, investing in your own career development while you're also in the difficult job search is why we all do what we do. We know, Linda, Ken, me, other groups you've been to, we know we do this and we do it free because sometimes people just need to have a human to get an answer from. And that's really important. How many questions? I'm trying to get Google to pay me back $2.71 a month for an extra add-on I bought. And there's no way to cancel it. Anyway, that's just my problem. But that's why I'm looking for a human. I'm happy to be here. As Ken said, Linda said, we do this because we know sometimes you just need an answer. You need support. People have talked about it being a hard week for some, good week for others. Someone's already got a success that we can't wait to hear about. So watch me cheer for the success, and I will put my information in chat and also keep an eye on the chat as you all engage. I'll add what value I can. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Sue. And Sue and Ken, I always appreciate your support. All right, I'm going to put myself. We're going to do a very short, quick wins. Okay, so if you have a quick win, because I want to get to our topic, we know that layoffs are happening all the time. The job market is terribly unstable right now. And my cracked crystal ball says that it's going to get worse. And all the HR people that I'm talking to say that it's going to get worse. So you will see me talking a lot about layoffs and support and all the rest of that. We want to make sure that we're getting enough time for our actual conversation. So very short win there, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Deborah, unmute. There you go.
Thanks. So in less than 24 hours, I have spoken to a recruiter who found me on LinkedIn based on my skill set, spoke to one of the partners at the consulting company, and I have a Zoom interview with their client at 2:15 today with a possible start date of Monday.
Wow. What kind of job?
It's an interim controller position. So 6 months to a year, even though I really want permanent, given the status of the job market, I consider this a win because the consulting company does offer benefits and their model is to roll me into another position. And they think because of the software that I have, that they'll be able to leverage that. So,
Fantastic.
and in addition to that, I have also been speaking with 2 other recruiters for 3 other positions. So last week I was kind of down and depressed. And then Monday and Tuesday, it all kind of happily blew up in my face.
Nice. That's exactly what we want. And sometimes that's exactly the way it happens. Congratulations. Keep us posted on what happens. And if we don't see you next week, send me a message so that I can share with the group.
I will definitely let y'all know.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a phone
Not
interview
yet,
coming up
David.
tomorrow.
Not yet, David. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Marianne. I can't compete with Deborah at all for all that. So I have an interesting scenario. I applied for a role that was perfect for me. The next day I get a message saying, we want to interview you. I'm great. And I said, great. But I think the interview was AI generated. I don't feel like I talked to a human person. It was really bizarre. So I just wanted to put that out there to let you know that it's happening.
It is happening. And it's not new, unfortunately. So when you say AI generated, does that mean you were doing a blank screen interview, that there was nobody else on the
Yes.
other end? You were
Yes.
given a question and given X number of minutes to prepare and then X number of minutes to talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had never experienced that. I thought it was bizarre.
It is very bizarre. I hate them. I hated them as a recruiter and as a hiring manager. I hate them as a job search coach or a candidate. They aren't new. I'm surprised, honestly, this is the first one that you faced. They are happening more and more.
Wow.
Okay. We used to call them, the company that started them was Spark Hire. That was the platform. Whatever. That happened to face one, and you know you're going to be facing one. Reach out and I'll give you some tips. So
Okay.
send me a quick email or a DM on LinkedIn, and I will be happy to help you and give you some advice. And maybe we'll
Okay.
add that as a topic for one of our meetings. So, by the way, if you have ideas for meetings, put it in all caps. Okay, put it as idea, future, something there so that I can find it. I want to make sure these work for you.
Great. I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure I wasn't on Planet X.
You were not on Planet X. By the way, if you get one of those links for one of those meetings, they expire in 48 hours.
Oh, good to know.
Okay. And they may or may not be renewable, but you have to ask special permission to get it done.
I'm usually pretty responsive, so the 48-hour thing doesn't deter me, but the whole process was weird.
It's very weird. David, now it's your turn.
Okay. I have a telephone interview coming up tomorrow with this company called Amedisys. It's a patient services coordinator where I would be assigning people to various provide in-home care for senior citizens and for people who are in hospice or people who have other needs that require in-home care.
Wonderful. Let us know how it goes. Good luck.
Thank you.
Any other quick wins? All right, I'm going to share the fact that we have at least one person from our group who's gotten an offer and actually started Monday. Joanne Moshkovitz has taken a job and she's excited about that. She's making the transition from one industry to another. And this is not her dream job, but it gives her a foot in the door in terms of moving into more of that healthcare arena that she's interested in. So that's a great thing. By the way, if you see posts from any of the people that you're connected with, whether they're in this group or not, make sure that what you're doing is you are, if you see them on LinkedIn, support them, comment, share it. Let's spread the good news. Let's spread the questions. And for those of you who are looking, if you put a post out there saying, I'm looking, the rest of us, I'm hoping, or many of us, will go in and support that post and share with you to go along. Okay? We want to get you all hired as much as possible. Speaking of hires and speaking of this terrible job market and all the layoffs that keep getting announced, I want to introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker today, our guest speaker is, okay, Laura Krauss.
Krauss.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
And I'm going to let her introduce herself. But what excited me most, because I've read a part of her book and she's going to share some of that, is not only the story, but the tips and the tricks that she's going to share. And they're so relevant for today. So Laura, go ahead and let's get you going.
Thank you, Linda. And hi, everybody. It's nice to see some friendly faces out there and really appreciate the opportunity to share my story with you today. I did put my LinkedIn link. I think it's one of the first ones that is in the chat. So would love to connect with many of you after today's call. My goal for today is really just to share my layoff story with you and how I helped heal from it, because I think one of the biggest travesties today with all the talks around layoffs is that people aren't really talking too much about the emotional impact that a layoff has. I think we all know that layoffs impact more than just your paycheck. They have a significant impact on your self-confidence and can often create imposter syndrome, even in the most confident of people. So my goal today is to share a little bit of my story, what really caused me to write the book that I published this past November called The Layoff Cooties. It's Them, Not You. And I'll share some of the writing prompts and cathartic exercises that I went through to help me recognize that rejection is really just redirection, and taking that adverse event of my layoff and using that as fuel to really help me move to what I wanted to do next. So I like to tell people that it was just like any other Wednesday, just a regular Wednesday. It was a Wednesday after Thanksgiving in November of 2023. I had a very busy day on my calendar. I was a regional vice president of sales for a well-known global software company that I worked at for 4 years. I've been in sales for 25 years, and at this point in my career really felt like I was living my dream job. I was leading a team of anywhere from 5 to 7 highly talented sales professionals. Again, working for a company that I believed in and like to say I bled their colors each and every day. And I was on a call with a fellow colleague, just catching up on a regular one-on-one, when I received the infamous email to my inbox at 9:15 a.m. that said, "Your role is impacted." I don't normally check my emails when I'm on a one-on-one call. I like to give direct attention to the folks that I'm with, but for some reason, this email popped up, and that email signature or email subject line came up bolder and brighter than anything that I had ever seen before. In that moment, I knew exactly what was happening. I was being laid off, and I also knew that I had very little time. I politely told my colleague that I needed to go handle an emergency, that I'd talk with him later. And I went to my email and read what is a very impersonal email notification letting me know that today was, in fact, my last day with the organization. As a top performer, this was something that I was just not expecting. I led one of the top teams globally at my company. I was actually tapped to lead this team just a year and a half prior. I was doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing. I had a great reputation, all of the things, right? And my layoff just completely shattered me to my core. I received another email from my SVP of sales saying that I was to get on a Zoom call an hour and a half later, to which I attended. And during that less than 4-minute Zoom call, my SVP of sales, who I had generated millions of dollars of sales to his benefit and to the company's benefit, didn't even have the decency to turn on his video when I asked him to look me in the eye and share what the next steps would be. That also shattered me to my core and made me think about, what did I even do at this organization for the last 4 years if someone that I worked so closely with didn't have the human decency to look me in the eye and tell me what the next steps were. Again, I knew my time was limited. Within the next 10 minutes, all of my access within the organization was completely shut off. And my entire 4-year tenure was gone in less than 4 months. I'm sure I'm not alone with folks that are on this call who may have experienced something similar, whether you were notified via email or you had the decency of maybe your manager letting you know that you were gone. But there's nothing that can really prepare you for that moment. And at the time, I was 45 years old. Like I said, worked in corporate America for 25 years as a top performer everywhere that I went. And this is just not something that I ever thought would be part of my career milestones. And so for me, one of the ways in which I dealt with what had happened is I immediately started posting on LinkedIn over the next weeks and months. And I shared my visceral feelings of how I was feeling from being laid off from this company. And as someone who was not a social media maven at all, in fact, LinkedIn is the only social media platform that I'm on, I found this as a way to validate and confirm a lot of the feelings that I was having from being laid off. And I went from 2,000 followers to over 13,000 followers over the last year, simply by sharing my story of my layoff. And what it did was it affirmed several things for me. One, I knew that I was not alone in having these feelings. Two, it validated the fact that what I was going through was completely normal, because I started having conversations with a lot of people who had been laid off on a one-on-one capacity. And I found that to be both encouraging and discouraging at the same time, right? It was both encouraging to know that I wasn't alone, but it was also extremely discouraging to know how prevalent my story was out there in corporate America. My book, The Layoff Cooties, It's Them, Not You, really focuses on the emotional impact from a layoff. I think in today's day and age, we hear a lot about the financial implications, right? You obviously need to go find a job to support your family, pay your bills, et cetera. But there's really not a lot of conversation around the emotional impact of it. And it really is a grieving process. And so in my book, The Layoff Cooties, It's Them, Not You, I share my layoff story through the 7 stages of grief. Now, if any of you are familiar with the 7 stages of grief, usually it is contributed to when somebody dies. For me, those feelings were the exact same feelings that I felt when my own father passed away 6 years ago, actually today, right? Grief is something that you go through. It's not something you ever get over. And so I liken my layoff situation and people's layoff situations to the exact same emotional grieving process. Layoffs are something that you'll always remember. You'll remember where you were, what you were doing, what time it was, what you were wearing. At least for me, that's how it was. And it doesn't mean that I'm staying in that space and feeling that pit in my stomach for the rest of my life. It's just a cognizant recognition of, yes, this was a traumatizing event for me and I need to work myself through it, right? So one of the things that I'll share with you today is that losing your job is actually one of the 5 major stressors that people can have in life. And I'm sure some of you can probably guess some of the others. We already mentioned one of them, the death of a loved one, divorce or separation, moving or relocating, and or having a major illness. And then experiencing a job loss is the 5th one. So I've unfortunately, and maybe you even are one of those people who have not only experienced the loss of a job, but maybe you've also experienced some of these other life stressing activities. Some of the writing exercises that I'll share with you, I think will be really great helpful exercises for you in those capacities as well. So one of the things that I'd like to share that I did very quickly after my layoff experience is I started writing and keeping a journal. I've actually always done that over the course of my lifetime, but as I was having these, experiencing this grief, I found myself writing more and more every day. And those journal entries sometimes turned into very visceral posts that I would communicate on LinkedIn. And quickly over time, I realized, you know what, there's something here. I think my story needs to be told. And so I quickly met with a writing coach in March of 2024. And she really is the one that helped me come up with this idea of being able to share my layoff story through the 7 stages of grief. I'll put the link before the end of today's conversation. I'll put the link to Amazon for the book if any of you are interested in reading it. And Linda, I know I sent you a copy of the sample of the first chapter. So if you wanted to include that in the link or within your LinkedIn group chat, please feel free to do so as well. But one of the exercises that I did as I was going through this grieving process was I wrote letters to the people that hurt me the most at my former organization. So a little bit of backstory here. For me, the worst part of losing my job actually wasn't the financial aspect of it. It was the emotional part of losing the friendships and relationships with people that I had worked with for so many years. I mentored and trained a lot of women specifically within our sales organization during that time. I led a lot of our trainings with our sales teams, probably trained about more than half of our sales team within my company. And I really prided myself on the investment that I put in other people. When I was laid off less than a week after my layoff, all of those relationships and friendships went away. It's amazing the corporate narrative that gets told about you after you leave. And I'm not here to focus on, the hypocrisy of what that is, but everyone needs to know that it happens, unfortunately. And I found myself in a very awkward space where I wasn't able to even keep in touch with some of the people that I felt I had a huge impact on and that they had a huge impact on me. And so my chapter on acceptance, and if we go through the 7 stages of grief, you have shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. My chapter on acceptance are the 4 letters that I wrote to the 4 people that I felt hurt me the most from my layoff experience. So for any of you who are experiencing any type of emotional grief, whether it be from a job or loss of somebody, writing a letter and just writing those words out, again, not typing them, but handwriting them, is a huge cathartic release and an exercise that I would advise anyone to take, specifically for their own healing. And for me, it's not so much, the fact that I'll never know if those people will ever read my book or read the letters that I wrote to them. But for me, it was part of the closure that I needed to be able to move on from my layoff experience. So I thought I would read just a small excerpt from chapter 10 on acceptance. It's called Acceptance, the Gift I Gave Myself. Acceptance is not a final destination. There is no ending. It may be the final stage in the 7 stages of grief as we journeyed through this book, but I don't feel any finality in my grieving process upon arriving at this stage. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Grief is not something you get over. It's something you get through. Acceptance is the realization that 1, yes, this happened to me, and 2, you know what? I'm going to be okay. Part of my healing toward acceptance of what happened and the lost relationships I missed hinged on my ability to express myself through writing. Each written expression, whether from journaling, posting on LinkedIn, or writing this book, filled a void that healed my soul. Besides the what if, imagine if exercises I wrote letters to the people who were such a driving force in my tenure at my former company. I may never know if they will read this book. I most likely may never hear from any of them again. But these letters provided a sense of closure through expressing my final thoughts on what I would say if they were sitting in front of me today. I've even read these out loud as I looked at pictures of my former colleagues. Is that crazy? Maybe, but it's healing. I imagine their responses, apologizing where necessary, and maybe asking me for forgiveness. But I'm also cognizant that those are my ideations, not theirs. I wonder if they think about me as much as I think about them. There are things in my everyday life I still wish to share with them. Something as simple as a family moment, like my son's graduation from high school, or my daughter making her travel softball team, or some delicious food picture I knew they would salivate over. And then I remember if they really cared about me, they would reach out. And so I'm left with these letters, knowing I'm at peace, having said everything I wanted to say, even if I couldn't say it to their faces. By writing them down, I no longer have to carry the weight of these feelings. So I'm just curious, I'll stop there. Is there anyone here who can attest to the cathartic release that writing has? And have you ever done any type of letter writing experience like this? I'd love to hear.
If you've got an idea, make sure that you raise your hand. Marianne is there. I'll tell you that personally, I write a lot of those. I shouldn't say I have written a number of those letters, but I do them and then I do them for me. I don't send them.
Yep, that's very common.
So
I've actually heard a lot of people will burn them as well, throw them in the fireplace, right?
exactly.
And that's okay. The important part is to get the feelings out. And my whole goal with part of this book is normalizing the emotions that you go through, because a layoff is a traumatizing event. Yep. Marianne.
Yeah, hang on a second. Yes. Writing has always been cathartic for me. I've never done it in terms of a job loss, though. I once had a work contract in Zagreb, Croatia, at the end of the war in the former Yugoslavia. And I have Czech and Slovak heritage, so I look like I'm from that part of the world, but I couldn't make sense of anything. I don't smoke. I rarely drink. I wanted a bike in a yoga class, and everybody says, this is not San Francisco. I was dealing with war victims, so it was incredibly stressful for me. So by writing out everything that was going on with me, it just helped me to process things. And now I look back and think, wow, I got through that. I can probably get through anything.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Ken, you're next.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, when I lost my job, I didn't totally see it coming. But after I got through the initial shock, I just started writing and writing and writing because my background was as a writer, actually. This was a career change for me at MIT. So I got it, I put it down on paper. I look back at it 10, 15 years later because as a consultant, I went from job to job and it made me feel good just to get it out. I never posted it on LinkedIn until maybe about a year or so ago, and I felt really comfortable far enough away from it. But it's one of the things I try to speak with job seekers about. I get it. I've been through it, but everyone's journey is different. I hate when people told me I know how you feel when they lost a job. No, you don't know how I feel. I can
Yep.
empathize. Not quite the same thing. Even here, like I will support people, but I can't relate to what everyone's specifically going through. And I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I'm sure you're a lot of what you're law is very similar to what I did from your in a specific situation. But if you don't get it out of your system, and I never sent an email, I was reread my emails. I wanted to say things and vent, but I just never let it get past what I have on my own personal devices because I just didn't want to take the chance that it got out there.
Yeah, that no, and really, I'm trying to just normalize the fact that you need to get it out, whether it's in private. You
Yep.
know, people ask me all the time, or they say to me, Laura, you're so vulnerable on the things that you're willing to share online and so forth. Vulnerability is very unique to each and every person, right? What I'm comfortable sharing is not going to be the same as what someone else is comfortable sharing, right? My book is my personal and professional legacy because I didn't want my story to be forgotten. And
Mhm.
let's face it, I don't want to be forgotten, right? I think we all, as human beings, that's a very core concept for us, right? But at the end of the day, rejection is rejection. So
Yeah.
regardless of whether you were part of a 10,000 person riff or part of a very politically and targeted, motivated layoff, which I feel mine was, rejection still hurts, and it's still a traumatizing event that if you don't deal with now, you're going to carry it with you wherever you go next, right?
I found out later on that some of the people also lost their jobs. But again, it was a one-on-one thing. So I didn't know till years later on when we were on this platform. And
Yeah.
senior management would never to this day, they will never talk to me about it.
Yeah.
I've tried and I realized that at some point it's just not worth it. I
Yeah.
don't need to hear it from them, but again, it's just part of the process.
Yeah, it's interesting. After my layoff in November of 23, there were several layoffs prior to that within my organization, but I just never expected to be part of one, right? And
Hmm.
I actually went back to folks who were laid off in those months prior to me who I worked with and apologized. And I said, I am so sorry. I always just assumed, once you get laid off, like, oh, they're smart, they'll find another job, like no big deal, right? It wasn't until I went through it myself for the first time at age 45 that I really understood all of the implications and impact that a layoff has on people, right? And I was embarrassed for myself, and I considered myself a very empathetic person and leader my entire career. But until it happens to you, you really don't know A, how you're going to feel, and B, how you're going to be impacted and where you're going to go next, right?
Yeah.
Um, so thank you for sharing that. Anybody else wanted to share? If not, I'll move on.
So
Um,
before we do, can I just make one comment?
sure. Yeah,
Okay,
please.
sure. So the getting it out is incredibly important, but I'm going to put on my recruiter hat for a moment. If I'm reading some of those incredibly, and yours weren't, but if you're putting all these negative posts out there, okay, and that's all you're putting out, or those are all the comments or the negative comments, it may work against you. You're getting it out and it feels good for you.
Yep.
Be careful. Sometimes we have to look at it not only from what's important for us, but what other people are reading. And if all they're reading,
100%.
okay,
Yes. Yes. And I would say this, look, I started my own sales advisory consultancy after I was laid off. I knew I wasn't going back to corporate. So I didn't have to worry about my next job and what my next gig was going to be. So again, it goes back to my vulnerability and what I was willing to share is very different than somebody who, needs that next corporate job. You're absolutely right. But with that said, I the people that found my content visceral were the ones who had experienced it themselves, right? And that's for me. That's what I wanted to focus on, was letting people know that they weren't the only ones who were experiencing that. I will say this, my book is not, or while it is a telltale of events that transpired prior to my layoff and my layoff story and going through the 7 stages of grief, by the end of it, I hope what my readers get from it is that it's a very motivating and inspirational story, because the last couple of chapters are all about, okay, how do you take this adverse event from your layoff and now allow that to fuel you to get to your next stage of where you want it to be, right? How is this rejection, which, being in sales for 25 years, I'm used to rejection, but yet it's very different when it's you and your job, right? Very different kind. But how do you take that rejection and now redirect it to find your next best thing? And so I'll share with you some of the exercises that I do with my own sales coaching clients, as well as some of my layoff clients, to help them kind of think about where they want to get to next. The first one is a very simple one, and it's called alphabet soup. And it might sound kind of simple and silly, going back to your kindergarten days, but very simple exercise is to simply take down a pen and paper. And all of these exercises, I advocate you actually writing versus typing. It's a different type of emotive response when you're writing something out physically versus typing it. But I want you to write down A through Z on your piece of paper. And for each letter of the alphabet, I want you to come up with some type of description for who you are, what you do, the things you enjoy, right? So for me, S, very simple, sales professional. A, author. B, Ben's mom, right? Those types of things. And what that exercise allows you to do is to take yourself out of just a professional perspective and bring in some of your personal components that are important to who you are as well, right? I say that my career was as much a part of my identity as my big brown eyes. And for too many years, I focused on who I was as a professional without thinking about all the attributes that I bring to the table from my own personal world as well, right? And there's a very simple exercise of just an A to Z description of things that you are and you represent can help take that focus away from just the professional mindset to more of a personal one. And it's going to really make you feel better about who you are and not just being locked into that one thing. Second exercise that I would recommend doing is called Life Pathways. And this one is really 3 exercises within one. But the first part of the exercise is writing down what your life looks like today, right? The second part is, what do you want your life to look like that's completely different from the life that you live today? And the third one is not allowing any constraints to stand in the way of what that third pathway would be for your life moving forward. And what each of these exercises does is obviously gives you appreciation of where you are today, hopefully, where you want to be tomorrow, and where you want to be in your future down the road. And it really allows you to think about, what is not just reality, but really what can be as well, right? And I think a lot of people don't think about that. I think, I'm looking around the room here, and I think many of us are in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and we've lost sight of what it is to dream about what our future looks like. And I don't know about any of you, but I'm 46 years young, and I've got another couple of decades ahead of me. I feel like I'm just getting started, right? So giving yourself this opportunity to go through this exercise allows you to kind of think about how you're going to pivot. Ken, you talked about it a little bit, right? You were in the writing space, and you've now pivoted into a different realm in the second part of your life, right? And it's more common than you think, but you have to be the owner of that. And the only way to do that is to write down what all of those opportunities are. And then the third one that I'll share with you is kind of more of a reflective look on your life. It's called The Story of You. And I've done a couple of posts on this, but it's simply taking a blank piece of paper. In the middle of that piece of paper, drawing a line across that piece of paper. On the left-hand side of that beginning of that line, you're going to write your birth date. The other end of the line is obviously not your death date, but it's just going to kind of be in the future. And above the line, you're going to write all of those peaks and milestones that have a positive connotation for you in your life. Below the line are going to be all of those milestones and mile markers that, you know, maybe you're not proud of, or that were difficult or traumatizing event. Maybe your layoff was one of those, right? And you're going to do that over the course of your life. And what that exercise actually does is I'm going to advocate that you do that exercise, not just now, but also do it again a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Because what happens is those peak and valley moments that you think are the best and the worst of your life, they actually change over time in degree of their impact. And I'll give you a quick example. My husband and I owned a franchise from 2008 to 2011. Does anybody remember what the world economy was like in 2008 and 2011? Not a very good one. It was, there were all these factors that came in as to why our franchise was not successful. And at the time, I thought that was the end of the world. I was in my early 30s. My son was less than 2 years old. He was being raised by my in-laws because my husband and I were trying to run this business, and we barely saw him. We had to file bankruptcy at the end of it. We had invested literally millions of dollars, as well as blood, sweat, and tears. And I had borrowed hundreds of thousands of dollars from family to invest in this organization, in this franchise. And it was a huge failure in and of itself, right? And I look back now, all these years later, and if you were to ask me if I'd do that all over again, I would wholeheartedly tell you the 100% assurance, yes, because I learned so much about myself during that 3-year experience of owning this franchise that evolved and helped me and turned me into the woman that I am today. And I have no regrets on that. And so I would say if there's one message that you get from me today, and what I've shared, is that all of your life experiences are an important chapter of your book, and your book is not done being written yet. And I would just hope that each and every one of you can look at the transition and phase that you're in now and recognize that it's exactly where you're supposed to be in order to get to that next step. Linda, I'll go ahead and open it up there. That's all I really wanted to present from in terms of my book and my story. I'd love to help answer any questions that people might have.
Wonderful. And Laura, would you do us a favor? I know that you did at the very beginning, you put the link to your LinkedIn URL. Please do that again. Also,
Sure.
Can you put in a link to your book? I'm going to put the link to that chapter in our private group.
Okay.
But if you wanted to, if that's any, but I can't even talk this morning. Sorry about that. If anybody wants to purchase your book, okay,
Yes.
can you put in a link so that they can do that as well?
Sure. It's sold on Amazon.
And while she's doing that, everyone else, please make sure that you have your LinkedIn URLs in the chat so that we can connect with you. We want to be able to grow those networks as well and support you every step of the way that we can. Does anybody have any questions for Laura? If you do, please raise your hand and let's see how we can get those answered. Denise, I need to find you. There we go.
Hi, Laura. Thanks, Linda. It's just more of an acknowledgement. I am in the process of writing an outline about my experiences in the education system with my daughter who has ADHD. And I just want to acknowledge you in the way that you stand out from other authors who have written about similar situations. That's not only your personal story, but that you also included different exercises
Thank
that really
you.
make us think. And maybe it's common sense, but I feel like it's just another way of standing out from everybody else. And I just want to acknowledge you in the way that you accomplished that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One of the things that I talk about in my bargaining chapter is really reframing what happened to me from a what if scenario to an imagine if scenario. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Like, what if my time during those 4 years didn't mean anything? What if the time that I invested in these women, mentoring them, was just a complete waste of time? Versus imagine if for the first time my sales team had a leader who actually believed in them. Imagine if what I was able to share with these women are now going to stay with them throughout their entire decades of their career and moving forward, right? And that reframe alone of a what if to an imagine if can do wonders. And so I'd advocate for any of you out there who are kind of lamenting, why did this happen to me? What if, what's going to happen next, right? Imagine if just changing that one word from what to imagine changes the connotation significantly. So thanks, Denise. I appreciate that. And I hope people get that from the book, that it's not so much just sharing my story, but also giving people, real examples that they can use. Susan, I think you're next.
Yep. I was just going to share. I'm going to start crying because I got laid off 3 times in the last 4 years. And the last layoff came January 17th. And my boss saw the writing on the wall, so he left the company. And his last day was January 3rd. But before he left, we were a team. Anyway, we all got along very well. So before he left, he said, please, anyone needs anything, please call, yada, yada, yada. Long story short. So I called him the day I got laid off, and he said to me, now you can spend more time with Karma. It was the puppy that I just lost. At first, I took this, oh my God, it's not a layoff. But what my boss said to me over the last couple of days has taken that layoff and turned it around. Because this layoff allowed me to spend the last 3 weeks with the puppy I just lost. So it's looking for the positive in a negative situation. They did me a favor laying me off. Yet 3 weeks ago, I couldn't have said that. I was just, oh my God, here we go again. But it is about, I did the ABCs. I'm going to make them do this exercise. But I did the A through Z, and the first thing I wrote was I'm Karma's mom. And Karma, as I say, but looking for the positive and the negative, and I just needed to hear my boss say that he did, is now you can spend more time with Karma. So just putting up, looking for the positive and the negative, and you may not see it at the time, but.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad you had him there for that support as well. And look, 3 layoffs in 4 years is tough, right? It impact. I didn't talk about this a lot, but it absolutely impacts your self-confidence, right? Imposter syndrome can jump in. And even though it's been a year and 3 months since my last corporate gig, there's a part of me that says to myself, maybe all that success that I had, was a joke, or, maybe I wasn't a good leader. Like, all these thoughts creep in your head, right? But that's not true, right? Every single one of you, with your job experiences that you've had, and whether you were laid off, like I said, through a large riff or a smaller one, it doesn't matter. You mattered at that role at that time, and you had an impact. And I hope no one on this call ever forgets that, because you do matter. And with that, it jarred my memory for the literally the last part of my book. I'll read this to you. This book started out as a healing journey for me, but by the end of the writing process turned into so much more. You see, this book isn't just for me. It's for you. It's for someone you love. It's even for someone you used to work with, as much as you may hate to admit it. Layoff Cooties are not make-believe. They are very real. They originated and exist within every organization. So by default, it's them, not you. Don't let a decision that was made outside of your control limit how far your ripple effect goes in the world. This world needs your ripple effect now more than ever. I used to challenge my sales reps regularly to believe in themselves, to believe in things greater than they ever imagined, to believe in their untapped potential, to break down what seemed like insurmountable goals into bite-sized pieces, to celebrate the small wins while never losing sight of the bigger picture. I challenge you to do the same. I know your layoff seems insurmountable. I know you have financial stressors. I know it still hurts emotionally. But here's what else I know to be true. Your ripple effect is still being felt at your former company. The work you did there mattered. The work relationships you fostered mattered more. You matter. I'm asking you to believe in your ripple effect. You control the new ripples that have yet to make their splash. They can reach further than you ever imagined. By reading this book, you are now part of my ripple effect. My life is forever changed for the better from my layoff experience. Your layoff has the power to do the same. Make a splash, be well, and God bless.
Love that. Thank you. Any other questions or feedback for Laura before we start wrapping things up? Sharing your story, Laura, has been really impactful. I'm sorry, did somebody else want something to say? Did I miss it? I often do. Layoffs affect so many different parts of your life. And one of the things you need to know and need to remember, please, is number one, we are all here to support you. You truly aren't alone. You cannot get through this alone. It's all right, take it back. You could. Why try that? You do this with so much support and so many people who are out there who are willing to hear, to listen, to help, to provide resources, to provide those contacts, to share what you're going through, to know that you're not doing it alone. This networking group or groups like it, sharing it on LinkedIn, sharing it with family, with friends, even former coworkers. All of that really helps. So please don't try and do this alone. It will be much harder emotionally, it will be much harder physically, and it will take you a lot longer time. So let us reach out to you. We're all willing to help. So please let that happen. If you haven't done it yet, or you want to do it again very quickly, make sure that you've got your LinkedIn URL in the chat. We want to be able to connect with you and with each other. Join our private group so that we can share those resources and support. When you see somebody post on LinkedIn that they're looking for a job or they're asking for those resources and connections, share what you've got. If you see a post from somebody, some of our group is really very active on LinkedIn, and that's fantastic. Support them. Make a comment that not only says, yes, this is great, but why is it great? Use your comments to help move the conversation along. That helps them and it helps you. Somebody's asking for resources and you've got them, share them. Okay, let's help each other so that my goal is that we don't see you next week. Okay. We want to make sure that you're getting what you need from all of us. Talking about next week, by the way, next week we're really going to be talking about networking. And we're going to be doing a lot of networking. We're going to share what you want to do and make sure that what you're saying online and what you're putting out there really reflects that so that we can help you. So that's what next week is going to be all about. And then on the 26th, Kevin D. Turner will be joining us to give us those LinkedIn updates. And if you haven't followed him yet, you need to do that. He's really great. By the way, we currently have over 80 people registered for that program. That doesn't mean everybody's going to be here, but if you know other people who might be interested, make sure that they apply for that they register for the Zoom link as soon as possible to make sure that they get in, because I can only keep 100 people in the group. Okay. All right. So again, here's our private group information. Join us there. All right. One more thing. When I said that we were not in this alone, one of the things that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is sharing some additional resources. I've had some posts out there. Ken has, Sue has, a number of other people who are sharing resources and things you should do now. If you've recently been laid off, go through that grieving process, reach out to your network, but you also need to do things like immediately go to unemployment, start looking at your, right? Whether you've got severance coming or not, that unemployment process takes a while. Make sure that you're updating your LinkedIn profile. Let your network start to know what's going on there. Get a little more active on LinkedIn, and we're going to talk more about how to do that. All of those things that you can do, make sure you have a full LinkedIn profile. All of those things are important, as well as all of the exercises that Laura just shared. It's important to know not just what you can do, but really what you want to do. And that goes beyond what you've done in your current job. Help us figure out where you really want to be, okay, so that we can help support you in finding that dream job. Layoffs are not about you, it's about the company. You are more than your job. Make sure that you are reaching out to people and grab those contacts while you can. Start building those successes anytime you can. Imposter syndrome is real, but the more you focus in on those successes, that will help. One last thing from me, and then I'm going to ask for the chat as I turn off the recording. I want you to know that almost all of us on this call have been there. And if I'm putting on my recruiter hat again, I'm putting on my hiring manager hat. It used to be that we would say that if you had a layoff in your past, you were, right? We don't want to talk to you if you're not currently employed. That's not the case anymore. Yes, we want to know what you're doing now. And if you have a gap in your resume, if you have a gap on your LinkedIn profile, let us know and we'll give you some suggestions about how to fill it so that you still come up in those searches. And remember to ask that question from Kevin D. Turner on the 26th as well. Last thing, I know I said that before, but truly last thing is that we build on failure. Failure is not fatal. Failure means that you've given yourself a chance to learn something new, whether the failure came because you lost a job and that's not really your failure, it's the company's. But if you try something and it doesn't work, build on it, grow from it. And I will tell you, putting on my recruiter hat again, as an interviewer, one of the questions I loved to ask, and one of the ones we will do an interview prep with, is tell me about a time you failed and what you learned. Because learning from failure is important. Keep trying, keep working, keep reaching out to the rest of us for support. I'm going to turn off the recording.